Sometimes our mind wanders, and when we snap back to reality,
It works.
We're done.
They must be engineers as well.
Okay, welcome everybody. For those that haven't been part of the course and don't know us, we've got Scott here. He's a production leader on the hangar floor, runs heavy maintenance checks. Production leader Chris Stricker, he runs the site, one of the side shops, the concert shop. And I'm a 2IC on the team, working for these guys. From our previous exercises, we decided to go a slightly different track to everybody else. We've looked at the work distractions within the workplace, and it's affecting ourselves and the actual commercial productivity. Virtually everything about the way we work is challenging, or it's changing, sorry, and we'd like to think it's for the better. Companies regularly roll out new technologies and tools intended to help people do their jobs more effectively, collaborate more directly, and boost productivity, but in doing so, it introduced new sources of distractions. Surveys carried out in the US show people achieve more, are better motivated and more confident in their ability, happier at work, and deliver a higher quality of work when their workplace distractions are removed. As a group, which is greatly reduced, we identified some of the things within engineering and maintenance that have become direct distractions, introducing influences and hazards, which we'll now go over. I'll hand over to Scott.
Okay, hi everyone. So I've just written down some jottings that I've come up with on distractions, because obviously it's a bit of a minefield. It's, you know, go anywhere with this. So I've chosen to discuss psychological and physical effects of distractions that, you know, personally affect us in the business, caused by business processes and systems. I've categorised them into two. I've put them into two categories. And the first one is business process and distractions. So just one I've chosen is investigations and IR. So for those of you not part of our business, we are bombarded with doing investigations and IRs, and I'm sure many of you are as well. So some thoughts I had were investigations and IRs are something I'm finding I need to do more of and more often. Whilst the investigation IRs are very important, they can distract me from my day-to-day core role. In recent and past time, this requirement was carried out by a different part of the business, i.e. our quality assurance department. But currently, these are being carried out mainly by the production phase. This can lead to a large burden on time and distract me from my core role as a production leader. I guess while investigation and IRs are important, when they are due, we get further distracted by a bombardment of emails that copy in a wider part of a business and what seems a name and shame type environment, to remind us that they're due or overdue to complete. This then further distracts me from my core role of getting an aircraft out the door and puts a feeling of pressure on me to prioritise this task, which was in the past carried out by a different part of the business. I'm sure you could all think of plenty of other examples of where this happens to you. The second part is psychological personal distraction. So again, lots of effects can, you know, we can have effect on us, but I've chosen to choose business implementation and problem solving process. We'll call it HPE. So HPE is currently a company preferred endorsed process for problem solving and the implementation of change through the use of interest-based problem solving involving all interested parties reaching an outcome through collaboration. Sounds great, doesn't it? Okay, but HPE has a lot of positives, but here's what I see as negatives in regards to distraction. I've split these into two groups: business-related distraction and personal psychological-based distractions. So the business-based distractions that I see out of the HPEs is team briefs, whilst very important to disseminate information, have been known in our business to take up to 4 hours to deliver. Then there's the aftermatch function around the team desk, which involves teams trying to solve the world's problems. Quite a distraction, don't you think? And to a business in regards to production, and it certainly distracts me when people are not working on my aircraft. Team depletion is another distraction, as many people are removed from their teams for short or long periods of time to participate in working parties as SMEs as part of each HPE. This can interrupt team dynamics, with the teams drifting in and out of their areas and distracting the core tasks that we're employed to do. So now I'd like to move on to personal or psychological distraction. The psychological toll that HPE can take on individuals cannot be underestimated, and in my opinion is one of the biggest distractions at present in our business, and one to be watched closest. This will vary between individuals, obviously, and some of the psychological distractions I think we need to be mindful are as follows. Uncertainty is a major distraction. The longer the process takes, the more uncertain people feel. Currently, we have forms of HPE that have been going on for 2 to 3 years, and yet we still have no final outcome or implementation. Family distraction is a major distraction. Family distraction, the quote that we hear all the time, never take your work home or bring your home life to work, is bollocks. Okay? In times of uncertainty, we take our work problems home and our partners hear about it, like it or not. This causes unnecessary stress and distraction. We spend our days at work discussing the what-ifs. That's a big distraction about HPE, especially in an event that's dealing with market competitiveness and efficiency. HPE is a necessary evil and has a lot of positives, like I've mentioned, but we need to be mindful of the personal and business distractions. In concluding, life is full of distractions, many of which we can't control, eliminate, but we need to be mindful and self-aware to minimise the personal and commercial impacts. And in closing, this presentation was compiled during lunchtime with less distraction. Back to you, Paul.
Okay, so you've heard the word distraction used a lot. I want you to watch the video and listen to what the actual guy's saying. It's not a workplace video, but it has got some meaning. If I can get it to work a second.
Sometimes our mind wanders, and when we snap back to reality, we have no idea what we missed or how long we were gone. Daydreaming isn't the only thing that causes this inattention blindness. When we talk on the phone while driving, there are periods when we go blind to our environment without realizing it. So billboards, cars, kids playing, even stop signs and red lights can pass us by unnoticed. Certain things may seem harmless, but some activities just aren't safe to combine. Our brain is not wired to pay attention to more than one complex task at a time. What we're actually doing when we think we're multitasking is quickly shifting our focus from one activity to another. So while our mind is engaged in applying makeup, arguing with backseat drivers, fumbling for a water bottle, or a conversation, it's blind to the road. In fact, drivers are 4 times more likely to crash while talking on the phone, and 23 times more likely while texting. Driving can feel uneventful, but it really takes our full attention to keep the car on the road. We're surrounded by distractions that can hijack our focus. Whether we let them is up to us.
Okay, so I know it was all about a mobile phone, and you'll think, oh yeah, mobile phones, we all know about driving on mobile phones. But the principle apply at work as well. I've noticed today, managers, you've got to be in contact, understand that, you've got to get mobile phones here. They can be a powerful tool when used correctly. Smartphones today are not just phones, but calculators, cameras, portable computers, and even a means for managers to connect and pass on, or collect or pass on information to their staff. However, studies have shown that distractions effect is not always work related. Millennials and Generation Zs are spending up to 2 hours per day looking at their phones, and an astonishing 78% say personal activities are more distracting than work-related intrusions. Across the general workforce, a whopping 86% described Facebook as by far and away with top tension thief. Phone distractions can lead to accidents and damage in an aircraft environment. As has happened in our hangar, which I'll give you a couple of examples now. We've got a report here. I'm not going to read the report. I'll just summarise it. In 2013, a guy was flown down from Auckland to do the maintenance on the cranes, and he was late getting down here. He was 2 hours late getting down, so he was rushed. He was also pulled off another job to come down because the guy was sick. He got down here. He was fully inducted into the hangar properly, and everything was done correctly. He started doing his checks. He got a phone call from another maintenance engineer doing another check on another crane. And while he was doing that, he lowered the crane down. It's got a big hook on the end of it, and carried on doing some more checks. His phone rang again, and then he started to motor the crane from one side of the hangar across the other side. Normally, this wouldn't have happened. He would have put the crane back up, but he was distracted by the use of his phone. The crane then struck an aircraft. Luckily, there was an engineer at hand, actually stopped him by shouting at him, saying, stop, you know. And he realised what he was doing. And in this occasion, the damage was, we'll say, superficial. It took time. It did cost, but the aircraft wasn't delayed, fortunately. Another incident in the hangar. We're not going to name any names, but he was a young lad. He was tasked to do hydraulic clearances, which is you stand at the back of the aircraft because it's the best place. We actually sit underneath the fuselage because you can see both wings. You're connected to the flight deck with the use of a headset. You're their eyes from outside. They can't see up on the flight deck. All they can see is out those windows and what's on the dash. They asked for hydraulic clearance for flaps down. Yep, flaps down. Flaps came down. It was all good. Went his mobile phone, head down. On his mobile phone, clear flaps up, yeah, flaps up. Flaps went up. On his mobile phone, clear flaps down. This time he didn't look up. Unfortunately, they're not the only people working on the aircraft at that time of a check. Somebody's moved to stand underneath the flaps, flaps came down, struck a flap. Now, you might say, okay, yeah, it impacted on the flap. What kind of impact does that have on the company? 100,000 a day out of service. A lot of money for that aircraft. It was a customer aircraft, not one of our own. So we then got to go to the customer, tell the customer we've damaged their aircraft. The knock-on effect of this, that flap has to come up, has to go into Chris's shop. Chris has to then put other work off, which impacts other customers that he's dealing with. So it's not just the one aircraft, it's the whole fleet that gets affected. And we can get the aircraft back late to you guys. So you've got to then deal with your customers as well. So, yeah, mobile phones, they're a bane in my life, to be honest. I hate them. So, we all know we need them, we've all got them, but please just be careful with the use of them. I'll just hand you over to Chris now.
Right. So, looking at distractions, but I also call it frustrations. Frustrations, distractions to me are almost synonymous. So there are a couple of various guises, and across everybody there's going to be a multitude of issues that people can talk about. But I just want to take two particular frustrations that impact our core business of engineering, making sure they return the aircraft serviceable on time to meet a schedule, and that the passengers are on deck and working to their schedule as well. And make sure we keep it effective and viable business as part of it. So one of the major issues we find is spare parts, and this is a huge issue for most engineers in this room. I see a few smiling already. But I'll only focus on a couple of small part issues that we talk about, especially related to our composite section, and specifically there's a material that we have that is what we call a TAPS material that was time and temperature sensitive. So I'll give you a wee bit of background to it without labouring the point too much. So a brief summary of that is that it's a material that requires special handling. It's got to be cooled and has to be sent down with temperature sensitive material on to make sure that you track the temperature and that it's well and truly contained and encapsulated correctly so you don't get any moisture into it, otherwise you can compromise the material. And basically these TAPS materials, and there are quite a number of them in the composite section specifically, are the bane of both my life and Kerry and my lead hand's life. It's just become a real pain in the backside, to be honest. So part of our issue is the incorrect handling of the TAPS materials. We believe that there are people in the business that look after the transportation part of it who don't really understand it or haven't been given the training of it, and there's a lot of issues around that. And recently we've had 2 occasions where materials come down from Auckland, it's been mishandled, when we open it, we find that it's already opened, so it's been compromised, we can't use it, and we've had to purchase new material, and so that material is scrapped. New material is a 2-month lead time on actually getting new material in, which means that the job that we had planned to do has now been delayed 2 months, and in actual fact, going back to a similar occasion, we've actually had 2 of our elevators, our A320 elevators in our shop that have been in the shop for 18 months because of TAPS issued materials where there's been a miscommunication between it. So when we talk about sort of distractions and communications, it has a whole impact on us as a business. The other thing is finding, for our area, is trying to find information about what's going on with these TAPS materials and all the rest of it. It's not a simple answer, and there's absolutely no solution in this discussion, and I suspect that probably is going to be a larger overarching issue with the logistics and supply department, but that's something we keep on chipping away at, but it's certainly a challenge, a frustration, and certainly a big distraction. One of the other things that we have is, that I deal with certainly is the SAP system. I'm not sure whether you ladies deal with SAP and Workday in terms of man hours and pay-related situations. Typically, SAP and Workday do not talk to one another, so you've actually got to be an intermediary between any issues that crop up between the SAP system and the Workday system. You have to then try and work out the issue between them two and try and collate it, relate it, and all the rest of it. So there's a mismatch that gets, and we get these alerts generated almost on a daily basis. And to be fair, without sort of shooting Kerry down on this, a lot of it's a staff issue, to be fair, because the staff themselves are probably not as disciplined as they should be, and part of that's probably my responsibility. So I put my hand up there, and we'll talk further about that downstream a wee bit. But the typical examples I have with that, frustration and distraction, is a prime example. We've got a chap on who's away at the moment on a course. He happened to work on the Christchurch holiday on the Friday. Even though all the stuff and information was put into the system, up come these alerts saying that he had to do something about it. Well, I couldn't do anything about it, but again, there's the frustration, distraction situation that I had no control over it, and yet the system was still telling me there's an alert that you've got to deal with. So in summary, these distractions, frustrations, a lot of them are systemic. The systems are unwieldy, and certainly with respect to spare parts, we believe it indicates a lack of resource within that particular unit of the business, and it's possibly an outdated silo philosophy that's still has yet to be resolved between the various parts of the business. And I think it probably has a needs more holistic requirement to make sure that all of us should be working better together rather than sort of in isolation. It sounds really negative, so I want to make sure that on a positive note, from this particular course that I've been on, I think there are some positives from that in terms of becoming reflective about these particular issues, trying to understand and control some of the things that I can control. So from that point of view, I see it as there's a certain positive aspect to this course. So from that, I'll hand over to Paul.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so in concluding, people want to be focused, productive and engaged. However, life, work and unwieldy systems are distractions systemic within our working environment. We can't control or eliminate all distractions or stop using outdated silo management systems. However, if managers are better attuned to their existence and work with their teams to design flexible solutions to minimise their effect, this will ultimately be reflected in our commercial results. That's the end of our presentation.
Thanks, guys. Quite a wide breadth of potential distractions for us to consider, and I appreciate the way that you brought it to life for us in terms of the stories and the experiences that you've had. It was easy to see and feel what it must be like to be in your shoes when these things are happening. Before I ask a question, I'd like to invite our guests, if you've got any questions you'd like to position or feedback you'd like to offer.
For me, it was a really good topic to kind of listen to, and I think your video was really good just in how life is distracting. And there's a couple of things that stood out for me. One saddened me was the feeling that work stays at work, home stays at home, because I think that's a really unrealistic view. So I'm pleased that you raised it. And I certainly would, to me people talk about work-life balance, but it's kind of work-life fusion. The two go hand in hand. You can't spend 40 hours a week somewhere and not have your home life come into it. So in terms of leadership, I'd encourage you to take that message away, because it's not, I don't think that's that's just my opinion, I don't think it's a great opinion to have thought out there. HPE definitely, I think we probably can all sit here and nod and agree with those challenges around how timing, when you're talking about HP groups that go on for a couple of years, it's really hard from your team being stable, but equally from a cost perspective, and equally so I could relate to some of those challenges that you have. And I think because we are in a 24-hour operation world, it's really hard to not have those distractions. So for me, you've kind of made me walk away. I don't have the answer, some of mine's just a comment. I'm kind of thinking, what are the distractions that my team are currently